You ever hear a story so ridiculous, so over the top in its arrogance, that you almost think it has to be fake? Well, this isn't one of those. This happened to me. And if you stick with me until the end, you'll understand exactly why I did what I did, and why, when I finally pulled that rusty lever to open the dam, I didn't feel 1 ounce of regret. In fact, I smiled. See, I never planned to be that guy, the one who goes head-to-head with an entire homeowners association. I bought my land years ago, out here by the lake, far from the noise of the city. It wasn't just a piece of property. It was my sanctuary. My mornings were spent watching mist rise over the water, my nights under a blanket of stars. And right in the middle of it all, the dam. My dam. A sturdy concrete wall holding back a massive reservoir that kept the land fertile and the wildlife thriving. It was mine, legally, historically, and personally. But here's the thing about HOAs, they don't care about your peace. They care about control. And one day, without so much as a knock on my door, I started seeing surveyors. Strangers in neon vests walking my property line, sticking flags in the soil like they were claiming it for themselves. Then came the trucks. The noise. The smell of asphalt. And before I knew it, houses. Dozens of them. Neatly arranged, identical boxes popping up one by one, like some bad suburban magic trick. I thought there had to be some mistake. How could anyone think they could build on land that wasn't theirs? But when I asked, the HOA president, a smug man with a handshake that felt like a dead fish, looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is our development now. If you've got a problem, take it to court." His words dripped with the kind of confidence only people with deep pockets and a team of lawyers can have. And that's when it clicked for me. They weren't making a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated move. They thought they could walk all over me because I was just one man against their entire machine. They figured the cost, the stress, the time it would take to fight them would be enough to make me roll over. And maybe they would have been right, if they hadn't touched the dam. See, the reservoir was more than just a pretty lake. It was the lifeblood of the land. And when they started messing with my water rights, rerouting the flow, and building foundations where the soil shouldn't even have been touched, that's when they made their fatal mistake. I want you to picture this, 35 houses, all lined up like dominoes, built on soil they didn't own, under the shadow of a dam they didn't respect. And me, standing there on the ridge, looking down at it all, knowing that if I wanted to, with one simple action, I could make every single one of their problems disappear in a matter of minutes. Now, I'm not saying I did it right then and there. No. That would have been too easy. Too quick. What I did instead, well, let's just say I played the long game. And if you think this story's already wild, buckle up, because it's only just getting started. The thing about fighting an HOA is, you don't just go to war in the open. They fight you in paperwork, in sneaky letters, in sudden, code violations that seem to appear out of thin air. Within a week of me confronting them, I got hit with 3 fines. One for unsightly debris, which was literally a pile of firewood stacked on my own land. Another for improper fencing, a fence that had stood there for 20 years before they ever showed up. And my personal favorite? Unauthorized water structure. Yeah. They tried to fine me for my own dam. I called them. I wrote letters. I even went to one of their meetings, you know, the kind where everyone sits around sipping coffee like they're the royal court, while some pompous chairperson runs through an agenda like they're solving world hunger. I stood up, laid out my deed, my rights, my proof, and you know what the HOA president said? He smirked and told me, "That land's not yours anymore. You're welcome to keep the part by the dam, though. We're reasonable people." Reasonable? They had bulldozed part of my forest. They had paved over wetlands where herons used to nest. And now, they were acting like I should be grateful they were leaving me a corner of what I rightfully owned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing, thinking about the way they dismissed me, like I was some powerless little gnat they could just swat away. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something: they were arrogant. Too arrogant. They didn't even realize the danger they were building themselves into. See, when you own a dam, you understand water. You understand pressure, flow, and consequences. They didn't. And that's when the first spark of an idea hit me. Not a plan yet, just a thought. But it was enough to keep me awake until sunrise. The next morning, I drove out to the ridge above the dam, looked out over the reservoir, and I swear it looked different. Not calmer, heavier. Like it knew what was coming. I ran my hand along the old metal lever, the one that controlled the gates, and I thought, if I ever pull this, there's no going back. Still, I didn't act. Instead, I started gathering everything I could. Maps. Old water flow records. Weather forecasts. Because if I was going to make a move, it wouldn't be sloppy. It wouldn't be rash. And it would definitely be permanent. Weeks passed, and the HOA got bolder. They finished the framing on the first row of houses. They started advertising the new development, luxury lakeside living, like they owned the view, the air, the water itself. Families started touring the lots. Kids played where my orchard used to be. And the HOA? They were raking in deposits, all while ignoring my letters, my calls, and even my lawyer's warnings. I tried one last time to resolve it without going nuclear. I met with the president again, this time with a calm smile. I offered them a deal: buy the land from me at market value, every inch they'd built on, plus damages. He laughed. Laughed in my face. Said, "We've already invested too much. You won't win in court, and you can't touch us." That was it. The final straw. Because here's the thing, they were right about one thing: I couldn't win in court. Not in time. But the fight wasn't going to happen in a courtroom. That night, I went up to the ridge again. I stood there in the dark, flashlight in hand, staring at the lever. I thought about all the people who had wronged me in my life. And then I thought about these smug, self-satisfied HOA bullies who had taken my land, my peace, and my trust in the system. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. But this wasn't just about yanking a lever and watching chaos unfold. No. Timing was everything. See, water levels had been rising for weeks thanks to heavy rains. The ground in their luxury development was already soft. The drainage they'd installed was pathetic, cheap shortcuts to save money. And the best part? They didn't even know it. So, I waited. I waited until the perfect storm. Until the reservoir was so full you could feel the weight of it pressing against the dam. Until the soil was soaked through, ready to give way. And when that day finally came, I was ready. It was just after dawn when I made my move. The sky was still bruised from last night's storm, clouds heavy and low. The air was thick with that electric stillness you get before something big happens. I walked up to the dam in my raincoat, boots splashing through puddles, every step echoing in my head like a drumbeat. When I reached the control house, I didn't hesitate. My hands were steady as I wrapped them around the cold metal lever. I took a deep breath, and in that moment, everything went quiet: the wind, the birds, even my own heartbeat. Then I pulled. At first, there was just a deep groan from the old machinery, like it was waking up after a long sleep. Then came the rush, a roaring, unstoppable surge as the gates opened and the water lunged forward like it had been waiting for this moment. I stepped outside and watched as the reservoir emptied itself in a furious cascade. Downstream, the neat little rows of cookie-cutter houses stood no chance. The water hit fast and hard, churning up mud, ripping out landscaping, swallowing driveways. Foundations cracked. Walls buckled. The pristine image of luxury lakeside living dissolved into chaos. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, watching it happen. Watching them learn the hard way what happens when you build on land that isn't yours and disrespect the person who owns the power over it. By the time the flow slowed, the development was unrecognizable. The HOA president? He was standing knee-deep in muddy water, screaming into his phone. I walked right past him, boots splashing, and said the only words I had for him, "I warned you." They tried to come after me legally after that, of course. But here's the thing, everything I did was within my rights. The dam was mine. The water was mine. And if their cheap construction couldn't handle nature doing what nature does, well, that wasn't my problem. Some people still ask me if I regret it. If I think I went too far. And to that I say, when you've been pushed far enough, sometimes the only way to take back control, is to let it flow. If you enjoyed watching the HOA get what they deserve, hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable war stories, and share this video with anyone who loves a little justice served cold.